Welcome to our 7th edition of Euroworld News from a brand new studio, Wonders of Modern Technology. From Ireland, having a look at what happens around the world, we cannot but be fascinated by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who, like a magician, keeps pulling rabbits out of his hat, springing a new surprise every day. The latest being his decision to abolish, 1 month earlier, the rule of isolation for those who test COVID positive. Since the beginning of the Partygate controversy, which has stirred dissent on his responsibility as a Prime Minister in Westminster, Johnson, as pointed out by acute political observers, has become ever so active, grabbing every opportunity both domestically and abroad to create a smokescreen of frenzied activities to distract attention from the severe political pressure he is under, while showing how efficient he is as a Prime Minister. But among all his dissenters, there are some of his closest conservative cronies who keep praising him as an exceptional leader who has delivered Brexit, delivered economic recovery, and delivered COVID vaccination on the largest scale in the world. Of course, one could argue that with regard to Brexit, he was instrumental in spreading lies which convinced the British electorate to vote for an exit from the EU, with all the consequences we all know. And as for the claimed economic recovery, up to 15 million people are still in poverty, exacerbated by increasing living costs, creating a cycle that keeps people trapped in hardship. And the UK's welfare system also makes it difficult for those struggling to get a decent income. Social security is not enough for people in work, looking for work, or dealing with health issues to avoid poverty. With regard to the pandemic, while it is true that the UK had the highest percentage of vaccination, a too precocious abolition of restrictions have caused and are still causing a high level of mortality and contagion. On this issue, we asked for the opinion of Tancredi Caruso, Associate Professor in the School of Biology and Environmental Science at University College Dublin.
The pandemic is evolving, and so it is logical that governments change the levels of restrictions because there will be a point where we will have to basically coexist with the virus. And as we say, from pandemics, we will go into a situation of endemicity of the virus. However, the data we currently have are very unclear about how safe it might be lifting restrictions relatively early or maybe later. And in fact, this is reflected by how different governments are doing completely different things. So from this point of view, I do not really agree with the speed at which the UK government is now proposing to lift restrictions. It may work, but the problem is that, especially from a scientific point of view, we need to have a precautionary principle. If we don't have the data, we try to make decisions that are with the least possible risk for the health of the population. I mean, here we are speaking of decisions that may actually imply more or fewer deaths. So it's not something that you may take lightly. But the problem is that, of course, governments don't take decisions just based on scientific evidence. There are many other factors that come into play, and I'm pretty sure that in the case of the UK government at this point in time, there will be many other factors other than scientific evidence on which to base their decisions. So I would say that scientific evidence is only one of the very many factors that governments take into consideration when they make these decisions. And honestly, at least for what is my knowledge, I don't think the evidence is sufficient enough to justify such a rapid lifting of the restrictions. I will be much more cautious.
On the Ukrainian standoff, there is a glimpse of hope that diplomatic negotiations may solve the impasse. French President Macron has really done a good job over the last few days in creating a platform for dialogue. He has met Putin, the president of Ukraine, and is now organizing a so-called Normandy format meeting in Berlin between Putin, the president of Ukraine, the German chancellor, and himself to discuss the implementation of a ceasefire and concrete political solutions to the ongoing tensions. In the meantime, Boris Johnson held talks on the Ukrainian crisis with NATO Secretary General before flying to Poland on a trip designed to reassure Eastern European allies about the UK's support in the face of Russian aggression. Even in this, Johnson has preferred wearing the battle armor rather than contributing to peaceful negotiations. This is an appraisal on the matter by Micheál O'Hurley, our political analyst.
Concetto diplomatic efforts to resolve the tensions caused by Russia's buildup of combat troops on Ukraine's border have so far failed. President Macron visited Moscow earlier in the week. Upon leaving, he told the world that President Putin had pledged neither to escalate or de-escalate the situation, and by the time he arrived in Kyiv, the Kremlin spokesperson had rubbished that statement, and indeed, the Russian Navy continued to steam towards the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea, effectively restricting all freedom of movement in those regions. The Russian army continues to build up combat troops on Ukraine's border and in Belarus, and the Russian Air Force continues to move fuel and equipment towards the border as well. The operative tool to resolve the situation at present is the Minsk agreements. The Minsk agreements were reached after Russia had already invaded Ukraine in 2014 and was reached between Germany, France, Russia, and Ukraine. The agreement lacked clarity, specificity, and timelines, and Russia has used that to their advantage without implementing the Minsk agreement in full while blaming Ukraine for its failures. It may be time to look at President Erdogan's offer of mediation from Istanbul. Turkey has a strong relationship with both Russia and Ukraine, and given the current failures of Europe to resolve this issue, it may be time for a strong leader like Erdogan to lead the negotiations to reduce tensions. We will only wait and see. Next week, the new Chancellor of Germany will be visiting Moscow, and we'll look for developments then. I'm Micheál O'Hurley of Diplomacy in Ireland, the European diplomat reporting for Euroworldnews.
Dr. Enzo Farinella is a Sicilian who has lived in Ireland most of his life. A former journalist, correspondent for the Italian press agency for many years, as well as a lecturer of Italian in Irish universities at Italian Institute of Culture in Dublin, he has several publications under his belt, among which a series of books dedicated to Irish monks who, through their pilgrimages, spread Christianity and culture throughout the whole of Europe. The latest of his books, which can be read on Amazon, is entitled Born in the Emerald Island, Lit Up the Black Forest.
In this book, Born in the Emerald Island, Lit Up the Black Forest, Irish Pilgrims in Europe and Germany, I deal in a special way with the Irish monks working in Germany from the 5th century onwards. Of those monks, I like to mention just Saint Columbanus of the 6th century, whom Robert Schumann, one of the founders of the European Union, named as the patron saint of those who are trying to build a united Europe. And Marianus Scotus, who in Regensburg founded a monastery, St. James, that became the mother house, alma mater, of 12 other monasteries which depended from it, among which there was the St. Mary's of Vienna, still existing as a Benedictine convent, and the ones of Würzburg. Irish monks spread wherever they went culture and faith. The central to their missionary revolutionary message was the ultimate dignity of the human person and the sacredness of the human being, something which our European Union should and must discover today. Irish monks spread throughout Europe, And while it is an historical fact that the European life fell silent during the Middle Ages, yet in Luxeuil of France, Nivelles of Belgium, Bobbio of Italy, Salzburg and Vienna of Austria, St. Gall of Switzerland, Würzburg and Ratisbon in Germany, classical learning and religious life prospered. My books, most of them have been published by Amazon. In a special way, there is a collection of 8 books already, on all of them, of course, in the Irish monks in the various countries of Europe, and they are visible, or they can be seen in Amazon, under Amazon Enzo Farinella.
Another Italian, also from Sicily, has made a name for himself for single-handedly crossing the oceans on a motorized dinghy. His name is Sergio Davi. This Italian seafarer made headlines when he traveled from Palermo, Sicily, to New York in 2019 in his 11-meter rubber inflatable boat. For his latest adventure, he departed in early December for his solo trip from Palermo to Los Angeles, crossing the Atlantic, passing through the Panama Canal and heading north along Mexico and California's coast in his Nuova Jolly Rib before arriving in Los Angeles in late February.